Through the generous contribution of Dr. Lewis's family, we're very fortunate to be able to share with you these timeless recordings of Dr. M. W. Lewis, a self-realized American yogi. Dr. Lewis was Paramahansa Yogananda's first American disciple and dearest personal friend. The wisdom Dr. Lewis imparts through these teachings will give you a dynamic and practical insight into the ancient science of yoga as taught by Paramahansa Yogananda. This lecture's title is Expand Your Consciousness and was delivered in Hollywood, California on June 8, 1958.
Our subject this morning, expand your consciousness. Expand your consciousness so that you realize your divine heritage, the bliss of God's presence within you. All men are united in the bond of consciousness. And that consciousness is from the one great ocean or the sea of God's consciousness. God Himself, or Bliss Consciousness. Our Master has said, those of you who will remember, that without doubt, the bliss consciousness which the devotee feels is God's consciousness. And so you see right within us, even in this morning's meditation, I could not help but notice how peaceful it was, and how we were transported from this worldly duality of restlessness and outward consciousness into that stillness and that sea of consciousness which is God Himself. Our consciousness is simply a part of that great sea of God's presence, but of course it is identified and attached to this worldly dream. Therefore we feel a separation. But in reality, in truth, there is no separation between any one of us and God, if we can but realize it. But as long as we stay in the consciousness of duality, where the separation is felt in ego consciousness, just so long we cannot see the unity of God's presence. And so we have to do something about it. We have to meditate deeply, unite with the unity of God's presence as much as possible, and then break the duality. And when we break the duality, we break this cosmic dream duality, then the unity of God's presence will come, and then the separateness will go. And you will not feel, thou and I, O Father, but as Lord Shankara said, I am He, blessed Spirit, I am He. So there, in a few words, is what we truly are. If we are that, happiness will flow naturally from us. We will not have to coax it to come, but until that time we have to work. But we can always, in our moments of silence, which we should make these periods every day, not just on Sunday and Wednesday and Thursday or whatever meeting nights or days you have, but every day, we should allow God's great consciousness and His great light and His love to flow through us. Then that happiness will come itself, because we are made in the image of God, and happiness within us is natural, spontaneous, and it's right there if we will but make it our own by regular meditation, allowing the great light of God and the power in that light, the great love of God and the power of His love to change us, so that happiness will naturally be with us in every moment. Then who cares where we live? Who cares what we do in this world existence? If you can feel the presence of God, it matters not. But if you have all the money in the world and lots of position and you're thought well of and you do not have God, you have nothing. Because God is all. That's what we must realize. We must understand these false values of this human existence and ascertain and make our own the true values of God's presence within us. If we have that, then we will have true happiness. We will have expanded our happiness from the little satisfaction of worldly desires and the little pleasure that comes to the unending, unceasing, inexhaustible peace and bliss of God's presence. That's what it means by expanding our consciousness. Unfulfilled desires simply means unhappiness. There are three kinds of unfulfilled desires, material desires of which you are familiar. The desires for wealth and for objects of senses and position in this world. When they're not fulfilled, then you're unhappy. Then we have the desires, mental desires. When there's restlessness of the mind, you're most unhappy. Because there's no peace at all. When the mind is restless. Or when in your mind you have the envy of someone who has a better automobile than you or a better house or whatever it is. Then you see this unfulfilled desire. And with that unfulfilled desire comes unhappiness. And finally, the worst thing is the spiritual desire, the unfulfilled spiritual desire, that you don't know what it's all about. You don't know where you're going. When you get through here, you just hope something good is going to happen. You're not sure of it. That's the worst unfulfilled desire, and that gives us most unhappiness, and that's known as ignorance. So there you have the different types of unfulfilled desires that lead to one thing, unhappiness. Then we have fulfilled desire. Fulfilled desire leads to two things. Do not be mistaken. And fulfilled desire leads to peace of mind or the true happiness of the soul. Now, when the restlessness of your mind